How do you guys feel about houses sold as is, where is? Big breath.
Well, depends on the circumstance, I think.
And depends what side you're on too, I feel like.
If you're the listing agent, it's great.
Yeah, it actually is awesome.
Well, if people are offering, I should say, it's great.
Yeah, like with an estate sale, I think it's kind of a no-brainer there.
Yeah.
If you,
Whenever I see it and my buyers want, like they're interested in the
Yeah.
property, well, one, regardless if the home is being sold as is, where is, or if it's not, the buyer should still be doing that due diligence anyways.
100%.
For sure.
So again, but it does, I start to pull a little bit more history on that property.
Yeah.
If it's sold as is, where is, okay, well, when did it sell last? Is there permits pulled? What's the story here of this property? Sometimes I can get a lot of detail on the story. Sometimes you can't get any. And then again, it's just what your buyer's comfortable with, I guess, right? Like,
For sure. Sometimes I find with those ones too, like all of our databases that we can search, what's most beneficial is Mr. Google or Mrs. Google, because you plug in an address and it turns out it might have been a grow up and we don't have access to those lists anymore, right? So I'm always super worried.
might have been a drug bust at the
Might have been a drug.
property.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah, like and even on some like too, like you search permits and people are clever, like they change street address. We've seen that recently. So you have to really dig deep down. But like you're right, like estates for sure, like
Estate, that story to me makes sense. Like, they don't want their family like answering all these questions because they just don't know. Right?
And to
Was
hold,
a rental for 2 years? It's sold as is, where is? Well, you're the landlord. Like,
you still have some knowledge.
Yeah, you likely know what's going on in your...
The tenant probably wasn't fixing the plumbing leak when it started leaking. They probably called you.
They probably told you there's water in the basement or,
And you had to navigate that.
Yeah.
I don't think, like with the exception sometimes of estates, like you said, Sam, I don't think that there's necessarily ever a reason that we shouldn't be requesting property disclosure statements.
Yeah.
I always ask, even if it says like sold it, like, and then I've done my due diligence to be like, hey, just double checking it is an estate sale, but is there a PDS?
Yeah.
And they always typically say like, no, it was whatever, but at least then I've tried. Just to get
And you never know.
Yep.
Right?
I've even seen, I think I shared it with the team, on an offer to purchase where somebody wrote, where we have that property disclosure and you have to strike it out, where they've written seller refused to provide a property disclosure statement and then had the buyer initial that. So it's still struck out, but it's acknowledged there. So it's like, okay, that reads a little bit differently too.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But what's your take on it?
Yeah, it's so situational. I think that, having represented some clients in very, compromising positions or in situations where they were not able to have any tie to any kind of like fix after the fact. I mean, those are the types of sales that typically get affected by a price point that, are not exactly going for the top dollar of sale.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
And the buyer then does go in eyes wide open, like there might be issues here.
Yeah.
So
I do think that it's, like you guys said, a property disclosure statement is great to have if you can get it. But sometimes, some people are just not able to provide if it like is an estate or something. But, we also have sometimes of people are just like too old or too not in the right frame of mind to be able to provide those things accurately. Or even like when you meet with somebody, like you may speak to them and you may think like, well, their responses on this might not be accurate whatsoever. So it might be better.
And you'd hate to put them in that position.
For sure. So I do think that there is, there are certainly as-is ones that are as-is for a reason.
Yeah.
This is for a reason, for sure. But if somebody's lived there for 60 years and you're not confident in them making disclosures back to...
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So, like, I do think that, like you guys said at the start, there's two sides of it. I think on one hand, it kind of is frustrating to see it because you know it's going to be probably a lot of things to work on or to fix. Like, it's not going to be
and
a
it might
turnkey
not,
place.
but it might not. Maybe maybe it's fine, right?
Maybe it's just
Maybe it's
situational.
just the
For sure.
situation where they don't feel comfortable, right?
For
giving
sure.
Yeah.
The disclosure.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean
For
that
sure.
the property is going to be.
Yeah.
I've had clients refuse to sign it, like, because they were divorcing. They were like, no, I don't want to have to deal with anything post-sale. It had nothing to do with the house or economic status. It was just, we're done. Like, we're washing our hands of it.
Yeah.
And also too, like, if you're not writing that line into your offers about everything to be in working order,
Yeah.
it's technically being sold as is already,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's what you're getting
Yeah.
if you're not putting that in there. Something could have been broken at the time you wrote the contract, and that's how it's expected to be delivered to you
Yeah.
on possession anyways without that line, right? So it's
Yeah,
also...
you're asking for a warranty, and it's. I mean, I don't think I've ever met a real estate lawyer that said we want you to add warranties to the offers. Like, everybody doesn't want to hold money after the fact. Nobody wants to argue things once hands have transferred. I think the other thing that I like from a buyer's perspective of as is it gives you the chance to prep to really dig into what you can into a house. Whereas, you know, sometimes you come into a house and you think, oh, you know, like,
Long-time
this
owner,
is going
40
to be work
years,
for
it's gonna be
sure.
great.
Like,
Yeah.
nothing's going to be hidden. There's no issues here. I mean, people hide stuff all the time. So I think that if you already know going into it that you're going to find some challenges,
Yeah,
it's a little
exactly.
easier to stomach when you know that there are problems.
Yeah,
So-
for sure.
I agree with that.
For sure.
Yeah. But yeah, plan to do some digging if you
Yep.
see as is, where is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it means it's crooked and falling apart and you need to bring a flashlight and a screwdriver to show that house.
Yeah.
And sometimes it means
It's fine.
it's fine and the seller just doesn't want to have...
But again, even if, let's say, a property isn't being sold as is and they have a property disclosure statement, they've been here for 3 years and this is all great. Yeah, you know 3 years of history on that property. Like, it, as a buyer, like, do a little more digging too if you can.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Like,
Because also on the PDS, there's no guarantee
No.
that all those checks or whatever are accurate, right? Like
sure.
you hope the next person is as honest as you, but you never know. And
Sometimes it's honesty, sometimes it's complete.
they don't know.
Yeah, they just don't know.
You don't always know what's going on.
Sometimes too, like, I find when I'm going through disclosures with people, like, if they were left to fill them out on their own, I've seen people say, oh, this was an issue, but we fixed it, so we don't have to disclose that. And it's like, no, that's not how this question is worded.
Yeah.
This is worded, have you ever had
Yep.
Yeah.
that we answer differently? And then, oh yeah, like, it's not a reluctance, it's just
Yeah.
not a clear understanding.
Yeah,
So it depends on
exactly.
that guidance they're getting when they're
Yeah.
filling out that form too.
100%.
This is sort of a sidetrack on this, but because we're talking a lot about property disclosure statements, do you find that you would rather have a clean, empty property disclosure statement?
If the person's lived there for 53 years, no.
Or exactly, or something written in.
Yeah.
Because I get this all the time from clients who are like, oh my goodness, they've filled in something on the property disclosure statement. There's got to be a problem currently with the home. And I couldn't disagree more on that.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I honestly
yeah.
think sometimes when the property disclosure statement is in detail and they're disclosing every little thing, it gives me more confidence
Yeah.
in that property because I don't think that they're trying to hide anything.
No, they're being fully
If they-
transparent.
If they told me they
Yeah.
had a roof leak in 1997 and
Yeah.
we had, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
okay, they're taking care of their property.
Yep.
Yeah. And they're being honest.
Yeah.
They're being
no house
honest.
is perfect.
And their memory from that flood
Yeah.
in 1982, their memory might be okay if they
Yes,
remember that.
exactly.
It's
Yeah.
also great if you can tie in what you're seeing on the property disclosure statement to what you see in a
See,
house.
yeah.
Like if you're like, I can see that this is 40-year-old paneling in the
Yeah.
basement and it has water it has
Yeah.
moisture showing on it. they have said they have had moisture
Moisture
through
here,
the,
yeah.
like it's one of those things that it helps paint
You're building the
picture.
history of the
Yeah.
home, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm the same way. I like the more on a property disclosure statement, the better.
The better.
Yeah, I agree. Well, yeah.
Well, yeah, as long as it's like we
some
have.
extent.
Yeah. Not this is a
Hopefully
problem.
the house
this is a
has
problem.
been great, and
Yes.
the issues you are disclosing
Yeah.
are normal course
Exactly,
of ownership type
yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, a shingle can blow off in a windstorm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, like there's a lot of things that can go wrong when you own a home.
Yeah, for sure.
And that description on like, okay, what happened, right? Like, okay, the roof, they had a leak here, and then 2 years later, this happened with the roof, and then 2023, they put new shingles on. Like, there's a story there.
There's
Yeah.
a story. Exactly.
Yeah, and it makes sense,
Yeah.
and it gives you confidence for
Yep.
sure. I agree.